Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we're getting into a brand new JRPG that recently released exclusively for the Nintendo Switch. We're talking about Triangle Strategy. This one's published by Square Enix and developed in partnership with Art Dink. This studio is best known for their work on Octopath Traveler, also originally a Nintendo Switch exclusive, which has come over to Xbox via Game Pass and digital purchase, as well as the PC. It is exactly what this channel is all about: nostalgia with a blend of modernism. So I thought this game was a perfect fit to be our next review here on the channel, as we continue to try to stay on top of some of the new releases that Nintendo is doing. I do apologize that this game review does not arrive the day of release like many reviews do, but we don't have contacts at Nintendo. We don't care about that stuff. We just want to talk about the games. So let's talk about Triangle Strategy. For those who are unaware about what Triangle Strategy is, it's a tactical RPG set amongst three kingdoms that were formerly at war, and now they're starting to get along with each other in an uneasy peace. And you play as Serenoa, who's at the heart of House Wolford, who's in the kingdom of Glenbrook, and you are going to start to determine the fate of not only your fair people, but also the very outcome of the relations within this war. And that's where I really want to start with this game, because if you've played Octopath Traveler, you'll know that the thing it was most complimented for was its gameplay, but the story people weren't a fan of, because you had 8 individual characters scattered across the entire world that eventually came together, but their stories felt very much individualized, where this game spends a lot of time telling you a story. A lot of players didn't like this, because you'll go upwards of half an hour to an hour of just dialogue, interactions, watching party members talk, seeing different cutscenes around the map. For me, that worked really well, because it not only responds to the biggest issue I had with Octopath Traveler, but also the story's really cool. Think of 16-bit Game of Thrones. That's what this game is. Everyone's initial motivations are not exactly what they seem, and everyone's scheming and is up to something. And also, this is more interesting because this game takes choice and consequence very seriously. So when you have a say in where the story is going to go, I think it's inherently much more interesting, albeit I am RPG biased. So how do all those systems work? Well, there's this thing called convictions that Serenoa has. And these convictions are an invisible gauge that is determined by choices you make in dialogue. And all they'll say is that Serenoa's convictions have been strengthened. You don't know which ones, they're invisibly tracked. That is one of my complaints with the game, because sometimes choices will turn out ways that you couldn't really control because you don't know how things are progressing. It does encourage a more organic interaction between you and the characters in the game, where you're really paying attention to what's being said, and you're really paying attention to how characters respond to certain things so that you in turn say the right things. So it's a give and take type of relationship. I do like the convictions system. I just wish it was conveyed better to the player. However, that does not substitute that there are some really awesome choices in this story that I have a couple of friends playing this game alongside me. We are on right now radically different paths, and it is a cool feeling to tell them where I'm at in the story and how the war is going for me versus how it's going for them. So for me, the story gets a big thumbs up. Like, I'm enjoying it. I'm invested in these characters that gradually expand over time. The core party of about 8 that you start off with is expanded over time with different characters that can join you in battle, but they don't really get a lot of cutscene time. They're just there to battle with you, whereas there's 8 main characters that are there all the way through. If I could best describe this game in one sentence outside of 16-bit Game of Thrones, I'd say, for those of you who are like me, and I know there's not many, but some will understand where I'm coming from, this is the Fire Emblem game you were looking for. For me, I like Fire Emblem Three Houses, but it really stepped away from a lot of things, both artistically and gameplay design, that I loved about Fire Emblem. And this game feels like that. The tactical battles are gritty and difficult. Now, keep in mind that the one thing this game does not have that Fire Emblem does have is permadeath, right? So permadeath is not in Triangle Strategy. If someone dies, they come back the next fight. If you lose a battle, you keep all of your XP, all of the kudos you gain, all of that stays. But everything else here just reminds me so much of Fire Emblem. The heavily politically driven nature of the storyline, the deep characters with very clear motivations, both emotionally and power structure wise. I think it's a really well-crafted story. So I've been really enjoying my time with that, but just know they poured on pretty strong. Again, you'll go 30 minutes to an hour with a lot of text dialogue that is fully voiced in both Japanese and English. Hint, hint, do Japanese, do not do English. But you have all of that going through, and then you'll get to gameplay where battles can take up to like an hour. Some of them are really tough. So let's get into combat. The biggest difference from their last game, Octopath Traveler, which was a turn-based RPG, to Triangle Strategy is, as I said, this is a tactical role-playing game. So you're going to have full 360-degree movement of the camera, where originally in Octopath, it was fixed. This allows the game to do a bit of a graphics flex, because before I dive deeper into the gameplay, let's talk about the visuals. This is a 16-bit game built in Unreal Engine 4. Again, really speaking to the roots of this channel, right? We're talking nostalgia, we're talking modernism. Put them together, you got what effectively these guys over at ArtDink and Square Enix are making, and it's awesome. I love how this game looks because it calls back to the Game Boy Advance, my favorite game console of all time, and every game was in this 16-bit art style, and it just ages phenomenally well. And then when you look at the environments that are inside Triangle Strategy, they're all built with assets in Unreal Engine 4. You look at the water, which is crystallized, and it's reflecting clearly at you, and it looks very much modern. But then you look at the sprites and how they are animated loosely. It's just such a wonderful combination that I cannot compliment enough. This game looks absolutely beautiful. I never get tired of looking at it. It speaks to my childhood, but it also shows that there's a clear love in this industry for pixel art games, and that makes me so happy. With that, let's talk about the gameplay. Okay, so this is where this game soars above and beyond so many RPGs out there. The class count in this game is amazing. So I mentioned how you can recruit other characters into your army, and they all have different little specific things that can tailor to certain play styles that work really well for you. My favorite, because it's just so weird and unique, is this character named Jens, who is I call him the ladder class. He's your blacksmith, but he can build ladders that you can then ascend walls that typically you could not ascend in the battlefield. And this game's all about the high ground, right? Like Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, I got the high ground. That's what this game is all built off of. When you have the high ground and you have an archer and you're shooting down, you get damage bonuses. I believe it's the same with magic, but I'm not 100% sure. But you always want to get the high ground. With Jens, you can take an actual ladder and start climbing up these walls, and your teammates can too. So it really changes the battlefield and makes it much more dynamic for both you and your enemies. I love this because everyone feels individualized because they have their own, what the game calls aptitudes. These aptitudes are things like Medina, who is a strict item user. She can throw items, so she can throw healing items. She has a skill that allows her to use double items. There's a number of ways to go about every battle, and as it expands to upwards of 24 characters that could be in your combat scenarios, it's insane because you can only pick 10, and it's like you got to make some real business decisions. But I love that this game actually chooses to drive one thing that I don't think enough games nowadays do is replayability. There's story choice and consequence. There is gameplay choice and consequence. Who do you want to bring into your army? Who is in there will then level up. Also, people who appear in combat more are more loyal to you. So you want to remember your OGs. You want to keep them in line, and it encourages you to really consider the relationships you have with others. Because again, going back to the story here, these scales of conviction moments are amazing. What'll happen is there will be points in the story where you're going to go left or right. And you have to have a decision that's made not solely by you, but by your whole team. This concept alone kicks butt because it makes it where your character's not overpowered and overruling everyone. It's like, what does everyone think? And so you'll go around these little villages and you'll talk to people and say, what's going on here? And you'll collect information, and you can take that information and use it in speech options in the game. And those speech options can sway people on the scales of conviction to your side. Let's say you didn't want to sacrifice a certain someone. Let me dig up the information, see what I can figure out. And you can use that information to sway people to your side. However, what's great about this game, this is fantastic design, is that the thing you unlock, the information you unlock, isn't always the answer. That's not the de facto answer. So it encourages you, again, to read and really think about where these characters are at mentally, and that in turn demands thoughtful writing, which this game does. So while a lot of people have complained a lot about the storytelling and the amount of text you got to go through, I think it's worthwhile because it's well thought out. It respects your time in the sense that they give you something that you can invest in, you can really sink your teeth into, and believe that these characters are real despite the art style being thrown back to like the 90s. It's awesome though. So getting back to the gameplay, like I said, as these characters appear more, it'll strengthen your convictions, it'll weaken and strengthen your relationships with certain people, and so it makes you think a lot about how you're going to structure out your squad. Do you want to go all power with, side characters that aren't appearing in the story more, or do you want to stay loyal to the original crew that helped you in House Wolfort? There's a lot of options that you can go with there. There are certain classes, we'll call them, that are more busted than others, like Anna, the spy. I've seen some conversations on my own personal Discord server. I've seen them online. My friends and I agree. Anna is busted. She's a spy. She gets to attack twice or use 2 actions per turn, so she can move around the map, go stealthy. No one can see her. Then she can strike from the shadows, then go stealthy again. It's awesome. And each of these classes has what's called TP. This TP determines the amount of abilities you can use before it recharges. So things like spells, I mentioned going invisible, that type of ability, building those ladders, setting traps, so on and so forth, cost TP. And there are classes that are actually buffs that can restore TP to players next to them. So there's so many different chain reactions you can do. But these abilities are unlocked as you level up characters that are in your squad. So there's a lot of thought put into that because you can't really farm in this game. There are mock battles you can do if you go to the tent, your encampment, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. You can go inside there and you can do these mock mental battles, which I just think of like Sarah Noah galaxy braining himself into a battle like, how would things go here in this tactical RPG? And so you can go into these battles. You can farm a little bit, but you quickly out-level them. And some of these battles in the main story are tough. Like I remember arriving at one that said, you should be level 13, and I was 10. So I had to fight, lose, and then repeat the battle, which could be an issue in the long run. If there's not enough mock battles, there's not any places to farm, and you're under-leveled, the game kind of tells you to lose and then try again, even though you don't want to lose. There's no way to really sometimes overcome those odds. So that can be a little bit annoying. But let's talk about the encampment a little bit more, that we have an idea of the gameplay systems, the leveling up. So when you're here, you're going to be adjusting your weapons, your accessories. You're going to be upgrading your character classes through your kudo points. Let's talk about it all. So starting off with the blacksmith, it's pretty simple. You're going to get different spoils throughout battle that you can loot on the battlefield. You can get them by completing mock battles. And you're going to take these items, or you can buy them from the shop, by the way. You're going to take these items and then you can use them at the smithy to upgrade different skills. So more strength, more HP, a better weapon. And since the resources are scarce, while it's a very simplistic system, it works. It's not as deeply complex as, say, the job system in Octopath Traveler, but that's where the exchange of tactical choice and consequence really plays a factor. It's like, okay, you can't make every class mage, healer, an economist, whatever you want. You can't do that in this game. But everyone has a steady progression tree that does have real choices that you have to be wise about. You can't willy-nilly them because there is a limited amount of resources and they don't pour on a ton of cash on you so you can unlock everything for everyone. You got to be really wise about things. And then the other consideration is as you're going through these battles, you'll say, for example, get some kudos by attacking twice and hitting 3 enemies at once. And these kudos are ranked up effectively like challenges. And they are unlimited, so you can repeat the same one over and over, like striking from behind. You can just keep striking from behind and gaining kudos. You'll go to a shop that is specific for kudos and unlock a multitude of abilities, but also you'll be able to progress classes to the next rank a la Fire Emblem, right? Where classes would rank up over time. Same thing here. You need a specific medal and you need a certain amount of kudos, and the character class needs to be at a certain level, and then you can move on to the next class. So you can turn Anna in from a spy to an assassin, and she's much better now. And if you upgrade her weapon, oh lordy, it's over with. She's busted. So it's this mixture of low resource count and a tighter skill tree that makes you more thoughtful about it, even though it's simple, because you don't have as many toys to play with. And when you factor it in with, well, I had these people in my battles for a while, I need to keep them around because they're leveled up, things start to narrow down more and more and more, and choices become, in my opinion, a little more tense. And if you know nothing about me, just know I love choice in my video games. Now, on the complaint side of things, sometimes the controls are a little not okay. And that's something I didn't expect to be saying about a tactical RPG, but they don't always translate well to consoles. There were times I accidentally skipped a turn because I hit B too many times, and I'm like, okay, I didn't mean to do that. But also navigating the field with the analog stick, sometimes this feels off, would be the best way to put it. I'd be like slipping and sliding all over the place, trying to determine where I'm going. Sometimes messing with the camera while going 360 degrees is nice. Isn't always working in your favor. It's colliding with a ton of different environments. So it feels like while the 3D camera is appreciated, sometimes it puts the game in a bit of a corner that the level design just couldn't account for. So that can be a bit of a factor. Again, I do have to make sure people know that while I enjoyed it, a fair criticism of this game is the amount of text, is the amount of storytelling you're going to have to go through. But all in all, I've found this such a worthwhile dive, a game that really respects my time. It's much longer than I was expecting, but the great news is that I'm having a blast with it. I also want to shout out the art on a different front. When you're tabbing through some of these character portraits, oh, they're so beautiful. They're very much taken straight from Octopath. Like they changed a lot of things from Octopath to this game, but when it comes to the art, not only in the gameplay style, but what you're seeing for character portraits is awesome. Speaking of which, though, because I realize the terminology I'm using can confuse people, this is not like your Persona character portrait where, boom, it pops up whenever someone's talking. This is like when you bring up their profile menu and you read more about them. This was something I found kind of unfortunate. The reason for that is because there is a lot of text, and I think just some changes on screen when 3 sprites are standing in a triangle talking to each other could have added a little bit more stimulation for the reader, right? Because even the most astute lover of this game might be squeaking out a yawn or two just because nothing's really happening. And I hate to sound like that because typically I'm very patient, but it's just something to be aware of. Overall, though, triangle strategy is excellent. If you are a retro gaming fan, this should be a no-brainer for you. Please do check this one out. I had very high expectations going in. Like I said, I love Octopath Traveler, one of my favorite JRPGs of recent memory. But this game shows that they still got it, and they're also a flexible team. They can go from turn-based JRPGs to tactical RPGs, and arguably, in a lot of ways, this game is much, much better than Octopath. So I'm very excited to see this game through, replay it more and more, and continue to enjoy it. So be sure to check it out if you're a retro gaming fan. That's all I've got for you in today's video. Take great care of yourselves, and I'll see you all in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.